I figured I'd do something a little bit different today and walk through an area that's all townhouses instead of regular houses. You don't have too many areas like this in Miami to walk through, so it's kind of cool to change it up a little bit. And we really need to talk about how bad of shape the housing market actually is in right now, despite all of the boosts that it's getting. You know, because the Fed just cut interest rates and everybody kept saying, you know, all of the economists, all the people bullish on the housing market that, well, as soon as the Fed starts cutting interest rates, everybody's just going to rush back into the market. And I realized it was only a few days ago, guys, but things are not turning around and the data supports it. Okay, this is not just my opinion. All of the data on the housing market right now is negative, and we're going to get into all of that here. And this, first of all, just kind of proves what I've been talking about here on the channel for a long time, that the lower interest rates probably are not going to save the housing market. It might at a certain point once rates get low enough, but as of right now, it's not. You know, according to some recent Redfin data, the pending home sales last month sank to their lowest level on record, with only the exception of the early months of the pandemic. So that's not so good, right? And according to the National Association of Realtors, existing home sales also fell in August in 3 out of the 4 regions across the country. The only place in the country right now where sales are remaining stable is in the Northeast. Surprise, surprise. But total existing home sales nationwide actually decreased 2.5% from July to a seasonally adjusted annual rate of only 3.86 million as of August this year, and year-over-year sales retracted 4.2%. Now, to give you guys perspective, a regular year before all this craziness with the pandemic and now the housing market, you know, taking a huge hit on sales numbers, it was normal for the US to sell between 5 and 5.5 million units of housing every year. And now we're at 3.86 million. And last year was essentially the worst year on record since they started keeping track. And these most recent numbers, with the most recent decline showing 4.2% negative year over year, is on track to be even worse than last year. And I know this is something that I've said before on the channel, but I'm saying it again because all the most recent data that we have on this still supports that theory. Here's what Mr. Lawrence Yun of the National Association of Realtors has to say about all this. Home sales were disappointing again in August, but the recent development of lower mortgage rates coupled with increasing inventory is a powerful combination that will provide the environment for sales to move higher in the future months. Well, maybe. We'll see. Can't say for sure that that is or isn't going to happen, but so far it's not happening. And the inventory has been on the rise pretty much the entire year, guys. Although the mortgage rates have only recently started coming down over the past month or so. So we'll see. But when we look at total inventory across the country right now, we're sitting at about 1.35 million units for sale, which is up 0.7% from July and up 22.7% from 1 year ago. So that is a substantial increase, guys. You're not seeing sales jump 22.7% year over year. You're seeing them go down by 4% year over year. So the level of inventory we have right now sits at a 4.2 month supply, and typically it's not really considered a buyer's market until we hit a 6 month supply. So the supply has been creeping up because it went from about 2 months worth of supply basically a year ago to now over 4 months of supply a year later. So we're on our way to seeing that 6 months of inventory, which is kind of considered a balanced market, but it's when it starts tipping into buyer's market territory. But here's the thing, even with only 4.2 months of supply available, we're already in a buyer's market in most places, simply due to the unaffordability and people's unwillingness to jump in at these prices and rates. I started my real estate career in March of 2009 as the housing market was crashing. Since I've been doing this, I've never seen anything like this, where inventory is still relatively low, you know, still in favor of sellers, but already seeing price declines, and substantial ones in some places already happening, and places just sitting on the market. That's not really typical of the housing market to see that. But then people ask the question, why are home prices still going up? Well, you have to realize they're going up on a year-over-year basis, but from the peak of this current year, they are coming down. But anyways, forget about that, okay? Prices are going up on a median basis. Why? Because we have so few sales, like we just talked about, but the homes that are being purchased are generally more expensive. So that drives up the median home price. We have fewer sales taking place, and the ones that are taking place are on the more expensive side. So naturally, you're going to see the median sale price go up. But if our sales figures were at a normal year of around 5 million sales, we would most likely be seeing the median home price come down. And to be clear, it's housing sales of all types of housing slowing down. It's not just condos, it's not just townhouses, it's not just houses, it's every type of real estate sale is slowing down right now. When we look at single family home sales, it's down 3.3% right now from the previous year, even though single family home prices are still up. Existing condo and co-op sales are down 11.6% from 1 year ago, even though the price of those continues to rise as well. And when we look at house payments, back in April of 2024, the typical house payment was $300 more per month than it is today near the end of September of 2024, yet the pending home sales continue to decline. So what that tells you is the monthly price of a home, the monthly cost, the monthly payment is not coming down enough still to entice the average person back into the market, guys. And I guarantee you, having interest rates come down by another percentage point probably isn't going to do it either. Median house payment is right now standing at $2,534 per month, which is only down 2.7% from a year ago. So people are going to want to see that come down by 20%, maybe even 30% before people are interested in buying, which ultimately means we need to see some sort of combination of prices and interest rates fall far enough to where these payments come down by 20 or 30% to adjust for inflation, because that's what people need to see it come down by to actually be able to afford the payments. And it's funny because you have people that are, bullish on the housing market say, mortgage applications are rising, it jumped 5% week over week with these lower interest rates. Like, well, that is a jump, no doubt, that's a small jump. But when you look at the long-term average of where mortgage applications typically are, it's nowhere near where it used to be. Mortgage applications are still sitting near an all-time low. So you have to read between the lines and look at the actual data when you hear stories like this, mortgage applications went up 5% in 1 week. That must mean everyone's racing back into the market. No, it doesn't mean that at all. Some people came back in because rates dropped substantially enough for them to say, hey, I found a place I like and I'm willing to buy at this price and rate. We're sitting at pending home sales down 6.9% year over year. And this is despite both lower housing payments and more houses on the market to choose from. You can kind of relate this to what we talked about in our video yesterday with the economy. Like the Fed is cutting rates, Yet we see the long-term bond yields rising right now in anticipation of higher inflation and maybe higher rates in the future. The bond market is looking at what the Fed is doing and saying, well, we think you're wrong. So this is very similar to the housing market because even though all the indicators of housing potentially coming back, with all the extra inventory and interest rates dropping, it's actually not bringing people back, and the buyers are driving the market. They're saying, no, it's still too expensive. We'll just wait it out. You guys are wrong. It's not cheap enough for me to come in here yet. So we're just going to wait. Now, according to a recent survey from some Redfin agents who are actively working with buyers, they're saying that some of their buyers are waiting for mortgage rates to fall even further, and other buyers aren't even aware that rates have started to fall. I don't know who's out there hunting for a house that doesn't realize the mortgage rates are coming down. I would think people who are, really in the game and looking for a place see that stuff every day. Every day you look at Zillow and Redfin and you look at your payment and what the mortgage payment would be on different houses and stuff. And I think most people would notice that if they have their head in the game. One thing that they do note here that can definitely affect sales is the new NAR rules, and people are wanting to wait until after the election to see how that shakes out. That's something that we've already talked about. People are confused on how these new rules are supposed to work, and some of them choose to sit it out. But also you have to acknowledge the fact that, okay, interest rates are coming down, and a lot of buyers are going to look at that and say, well, it's probably going to keep coming down. Maybe if I just wait a little bit longer, I can get an even better deal. Because the last thing you want to do is buy now, and then in a year from now, mortgage rates are 1.5% or 2% lower than where they are today, and you have to refinance because that's going to cost you extra money. Really, the only time that would ever be a good idea as if like you've been looking for a house for years and it's so difficult to find your dream home, and then it finally came on the market and you buy it today and refinance it later, assuming you can, the value hasn't gone down during this time frame. Maybe that's a good situation to do that. Otherwise, bad idea. But some agents are saying, once people know where mortgage rates are gonna land and who's gonna be president, then I think things will pick up and get busier. Maybe, we'll see, huh? Some agents are even thinking that this winter is gonna be busier than a typical summer season, which is something that you never really see happen. So the data will reflect that too, to see if that ends up actually being true or not. But what is true right now, and what is verifiable, is that the inventory is currently piling up, and the slow sales volume is actually causing these listings to sit on the market and get stale. So a lot of people are cutting the price and hoping to get rid of them. Look at those houses I showed you guys in St. Helena the other day. The price cuts on these houses are insane, and the amount of time on the market for these houses are insane as well. I mean, the houses I showed in that video have been sitting on the market anywhere between 2 and 4 years, guys, or 3 and 4 years. It's just unreal. That's worse than Miami. I've seen some listings sit on the market for a long time in Miami, but never anything like that as far as I can remember. And the other thing that's hitting a lot of would-be buyers and real estate agents by surprise right now, because they don't really understand how any of this works or track the markets, is that mortgage rates are actually starting to tick up slightly after the Fed rate cut. If you want to hear more about that, on why this is happening, just go watch my video from yesterday. If you haven't seen it already, we talk about that stuff a lot in that video. Now, home builders are also affected by all this as well. And with mortgage rates on the decline, home builder sentiment is starting to tick up a little bit. It's only up 2 points in September from August. But the real problem that home builders are facing isn't even interest rates, because they've been buying down the interest rates for quite some time when interest rates were high. So they were still able to lure buyers back into the market even when interest rates were at 8%. The real concern for builders is the cost of construction as well as labor costs, and those costs are so high that they have to pass them on to the buyer in the form of the cost of the house, right? And the problem is building those houses at those prices with what people need to pay is still just too high. And that's why home builder sentiment remains as low as it is. Also, home builders are going to be facing more and more competition now that existing listings are starting to tick up and more people list their homes for sale, realizing that if I want to sell, I might as well just do it now because things aren't really changing in my favor right now. And also, you got to remember that when mortgage rates go down, it also entices more existing listings to come to the market, because the lower the rates go, then the more people are willing to give up their low mortgage rate in favor of a newer, higher mortgage rate if they can find a property they like better. But one question I get sometimes is, well, what about building a house? Sometimes I get questions about this, like, should I build a house right now when home prices are coming down? And the answer is, in my opinion, yes. And the reason why is because, for the same reason that home builders are concerned about the future of home prices and the housing market, is the same reason that someone considering building their own house needs to be worried as well. Because construction costs and labor costs are probably just going to go nowhere but up, guys, especially if inflation continues to be a problem like it looks like it's going to be now that the Fed is cutting rates. Those things aren't going to get cheaper. It's not going to get cheaper to hire a builder or to buy the supplies to build your house. So if you own a plot of land already and you've been thinking about building, regardless of what's happening with home prices, I think it's better to build ASAP, because the sooner you do, then the lower price you're going to probably be able to lock in with labor and construction costs that are most likely to go up again next year and the year after that. So that would be my main motivation for, building sooner rather than later, is to just pay for lower prices for everything. Yeah, the housing market may be coming down where you live and where you're looking to build a home, but as long as you're not building it for speculation or investment, trying to flip it, it's not a spec house, this is going to be your home, then you might as well just do it now. Here's something that was brought to my attention that I haven't talked about in a while, and that is a vacancy tax. Charles sent me this story about how Lake Tahoe this year is supposedly going to be voting in November on a proposed vacancy tax, and he sent me the story about it, and I won't go into too much detail, but what a vacancy tax is it's basically a tax on a homeowner that leaves their property empty for a specified amount of time throughout the year. So like in San Francisco, they have a vacancy tax now. I'm pretty sure they implemented it there, where if you leave your house empty, I think it's for more than like 6 or 7 months out of the year, maybe it's 9, I can't remember the number, they will tax you for not renting that house out to somebody, because you're basically removing potential inventory from the market, whether it's for sale or for rent. No one's able to live in that property. Well, now Lake Tahoe's trying to take a page out of that book and do the same thing. And here's the crazy thing, and why a lot of people are against this, not just because of the tax, but it shows that in this measure that the city's trying to put forward, they see that there is not a single piece of legislation in this new measure that requires the city of Lake Tahoe to produce a single new unit of affordable housing, or even spend a single penny on housing affordability at all. So the thing is, okay, you have this new tax, what are you using the money for? Right? That's always my problem with taxes. Like, I wouldn't mind paying taxes of any kind if I knew that all that money was going towards truly helping the community you live in, and you see noticeable improvements year over year where you're living. Then it might even feel good to pay taxes. But when you don't see those things happen and they just take your money and you feel like you're being robbed, it's not a very good feeling. They're saying right now the city doesn't even have a great track record of spending taxpayers' money, and nothing in this measure mandates a future city council use of any of the tax increase to spend money on affordable housing. So if this goes through in Lake Tahoe, you know what the first amount of funds that comes in are going to go towards? It's actually going to go towards the legal defense of the measure and the bureaucracy the city will have to set up to enforce and administer the tax. So this is basically a tax that will have to pay for the administration of the tax. I mean, how crazy is that? You are being taxed on something and all the money goes towards setting up enforcement of the tax. Does that even make any sense? I thought it was supposed to make housing more affordable in Lake Tahoe. And it is kind of funny that this is a California issue, because it seems like a lot of people in Lake Tahoe are against it. And typically here in California, people continue to vote to have, higher taxes on everything. That's why you just have the high gas prices and you have high sales taxes and every other type of tax here. So, if this goes through, these people in Lake Tahoe are going to continue to get hosed on their properties just for leaving them empty for half the year. So if this actually goes through, this would require every owner of a residential property in the city to submit an annual declaration of occupancy. Okay, and then the city would be required to establish a process to annually audit residential units to confirm occupancy. Making a false declaration would result in a penalty of at least 100% of the tax owed, in addition to other penalties and interest. So lying about it will get you in even bigger trouble than just paying the tax. And after all, how are they really going to enforce this? Owners of residential real estate will be required to provide supporting documentation, as may be required to make a determination of vacancy. Audits may take place at any time for up to 5 years after the applicable calendar year. Sounds fun, huh? So I'm going to be curious to see if this even gets on the ballot in November in Lake Tahoe, and if in fact it does get passed, because it's funny that people would essentially vote against themselves, because I'm sure all the people who are putting forth this measure are property owners themselves, and they don't care because they actually live in their houses probably, and they're basically trying to punish people who don't and own vacation property in the area, help keep their real estate values high, and come and spend money in their local economy whenever they come and visit their property. But somehow that's something deserving of punishment now. But California, typically the taxes get voted in and go up. So we'll see what happens. So if you enjoyed this video, make sure you subscribe to the channel. And if you don't want to wait for my next video to come out, check out this one on the screen right over here, and I'll see you in the next one.